This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered or interpreted as legal or professional advice.
Welcome back to another episode of Mika Minutes. I'm your host, Mika Domingo. I'm excited to introduce you to my special guest, Brent Hensley, from Assisted Living Locators of San Francisco and San Mateo County. He provides families with guidance and information during the process of finding the best senior care solutions for their loved ones. As an attorney managing a firm that does estate planning, trust administration, probate, and conservatorships, I often meet with clients with aging parents or grandparents who are no longer able to independently care for themselves. I believe having Brent on this podcast will provide value as he talks about how he serves our senior community. Welcome to Mika Minutes, Brent, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Brent, can you talk about your process for finding assistance for a client under a conservatorship or for a client who cannot independently manage their own finances and healthcare?
Sure. In fact, I'll give you a real world example because I recently had a client that I was working with that had an appointed conservator. And the conservator was an old friend of my client's family, and he was helping manage her affairs. She had dementia and she couldn't make any of her own care or financial decisions. So I was actually brought into the mix by one of my home care partners who was providing care for her. So the difference in this process is it's a little bit few more steps than my normal process, just because in this case, everything had to be actually approved by the family estate. So even to start the search, the conservator had to get approval from the family trust just to agree to pay for assisted living. And then when we narrowed down the choices, which is part of my normal process, and kind of narrowed it down to one community, I actually had to present that choice to the conservator with all the costs and the reasons why I thought it was the best fit. And then only after that, the community was approved, the choice of the community by the family trust, were we able to actually move forward with the contract. So a few more steps and kind of safeguards through the process versus, my normal process.
Can you talk a little bit more about the community, what that means, and what you said about something being more of a normal process as opposed to this one that you handled with that's related to a conservatorship that's not the norm?
Yeah, by community, I simply mean an assisted living community, or in certain cases, a memory care community or a memory care neighborhood within the community. What have I focused in my normal sort of process is narrowing down choices to help guide the family through the process of finding the right community. So their budget, location, their interests, care needs, of course, to try to distill all that information down and suggest some options that I think are the best fit, and then tour with them, guide them through that process, select one that we think is the best, and then even guide them through the admissions process. So all the way on into moving the senior into the community.
How long does the process usually take?
I've had it happen within 3 days in the case of a discharge from a rehab or hospital. But then I've also had it take as long as a year when people are really planning, especially on the independent living side, where they don't have any care needs and they're really just working through what they want in their retirement. So it really varies. I would say average 3 to 4 months is my normal client.
I see. So, Brent, what is the first piece of advice you would give to someone with a parent or a loved one whose health is beginning to decline or is starting to exhibit symptoms of dementia or any sort of degenerative disease? What is the first step that they can take to ensure their loved one will be cared for?
Sure. So this might sound like a given, but the first thing I recommend is take your loved one to their primary care physician, get them checked out. If there is cognitive decline, that might lead to a referral to a neurologist to get further testing for Alzheimer's or other types of dementia. But first and foremost, let their physician check them out and see what's going on.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners and viewers?
Sure. I guess I would like to add in a second piece of advice would be start educating yourself on care choices as soon as possible. So it could be home care is appropriate to help your senior loved one stay at home as long as possible. But in the case of assisted living or memory care, start exploring community options sooner than later. Understand the costs, understand what kind of care those communities provide, because far often the clients that I work with, they wait too long. And then they come to me when something bad has happened in the home. It could have been a fall or a change in the senior's overall health. And when they wait that long, and there's an immediate need, it really does limit your choices. And it also drives up the care costs going into the community.
Thank you again, Brent, for joining me on this episode. And to inquire about Brent's services, you can visit assistedlivinglocators.com/San Francisco, where you can contact him directly and find additional information regarding providing senior care for your loved ones. And stay tuned for my next episode of Mika Minutes.